Welcome to the Mental Space podcast. Now, today it's very special for us because we're filming in the venue for this year's Mental Awards 2025. Welcome to the Folly Brasserie at the Montgomery address. Now, today on the Mental Space, I'm delighted to be joined by a guest who is not only a judge for this year's award, but she's also the CEO of Cigna Healthcare, Middle East and Africa. Leah Cotterill, welcome to the Mental Space podcast.
Good morning. Thank you, Scott. Happy to be here. Beautiful venue.
I am so excited to be here and so excited for the awards this year. I will talk a little bit more because you at Cigna Healthcare have been supporting the awards since year one, and we're now in year three. And thank you as well. I'm delighted to say that you've sponsored us as well since year one as well. So deeply grateful for that support. But we have a tradition on this podcast, and we'll talk about the awards in a bit.
Okay.
But we always open with a question about mental health. And what does mental health mean to you? Big question right at the top.
I was going to say, wow, gosh, I've only just
We're not easing you in on
I've
this
only
one.
just started my coffee. What is mental health? So being candid with you, I think it's fair to say that my understanding of mental health has changed a lot, probably over the last 10 years or so. If I think about where I grew up, no reflection on where I grew up, but if I think of in the time that I grew up, I wasn't aware of mental health. Maybe it was a taboo, or maybe it just wasn't talked about. I'm not entirely sure which that is. So I think I wasn't really aware of it, other than you heard that people had sort of a clinical diagnosis, right? You were depressed, or someone had bipolar, or an eating disorder, right? So it was this very clinical perception of mental health. I've worked for Cigna now for 17 years, and we are really interested in people's health, and vitality is a topic that we talk about a lot. And so my understanding of mental health has really evolved, and I get now that mental health is part of your overall health, right? Which is multidimensional, and it's about your physical health, it's about your emotional health, your financial health, and lots of other dimensions. So I think, one, it's evolved. Secondly, I don't think of mental health in isolation.
Which is a big change, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that's what's really evolved. It's part of your overall health. I think the other piece that I've really appreciated, and again, probably over the last few years, is in the same way as everyone has their own baseline physical health, you have your own baseline mental health as well. Some people are simply more resilient than others. Some people are more susceptible to coughs or colds. Some people have diabetes. Some people have anxiety. Right? And so appreciating that health in its broadest sense is very, very individual, very, very personal, and actually everybody experiences their journey with physical health, mental health, financial health, intellectual health, social, spiritual, all these sorts of things very, very differently. So I appreciate that was quite a long answer in the end, but...
Well, it was a pretty good answer considering I hit you with it at the top of the podcast. So we'll take that.
2/3 of a coffee I've had, so...
Well, while I ask my next question, why don't you get another sip down here?
Yes.
No, we talk about what you think mental health is. So it's the school holidays. I know you're a mother. We've got the traffic in Dubai. How is your mental health today?
That's a leading question, Scott. I just told you about my drop-off. I would say I'm in a pretty good state of mind, a decent mindset. For me, it's about balance. We have taken a conscious decision this year to stay in Dubai because of some challenges we're juggling with moving house and all of this sort of thing. And I think going back to that balance is, I like to keep me in check. I like to make conscious decisions about where I invest my time and my energy. So I feel good about my headspace right now because I made a conscious decision that we will stay here in Dubai for the summer. We're seeing it through. It's it's having its purpose, if you like,
Yeah.
because we're not stretching ourselves to run back to the UK and try and visit 10 different family and friends. And
Which is never that great for your mental health
it,
anyway, but
it's it's not, is it? And it's so sad. But then you come home waiting for a break. So
yeah.
my good headspace is not because there aren't a whole ton of plates spinning around me, but more because I feel like I've been able to make conscious decisions
Mm.
that are helping me manage the pace of what's going on around me, if that makes
No,
sense.
it does. I mean, it leads me to a question because we've collaborated a lot on research that Cigna Healthcare do every year around the workplace and around employees'
Yeah.
mental health. But I'm going to flip it to you, if I may, to start with, because you talk about balance, you talk about plate spinning. I mean, you're the CEO of Middle East and Africa. Um, I'm imagining that's a fairly busy role. How do you ensure that balance throughout the year, not just through the summer months right now,
Yeah.
as a leader?
Yeah.
And how has your perspective of your mental health within that role,
Yeah.
changed perhaps over the last 5, 10 years as you've got more aware
Yeah.
of it being a general issue?
Yeah.
How have you become more aware of your own well-being and how that impacts your ability to be a good leader?
Yeah. Great question. There was one day, I don't know why it sticks out in my mind,
Mm.
but I think it ended up being pivotal. Um, the kids were really small. I was driving to work here. Um, it was a month until my husband and I were going to go on. We had got my parents coming over, and we were going to the Maldives. Our first adult only escape from the kids. And work was crazy busy. The kids were really small, sort of 2 and 3 at this point, maybe even younger. And all I could think about is, what am I going to wear on the beach in the Maldives? I wasn't feeling good about myself,
Right.
right?
Okay.
And I really wanted to lose some weight. And, I was just really focused on that feeling of wanting to feel good when I got to the Maldives. And it was in my mind. And I was driving along Alcar Road. And I remember saying to myself, why are you beating yourself up?
Mm.
Like, why are you making this next month a real problem for you? Why are you letting yourself wind yourself up about it? This is not about what you look like. This is about just going and enjoying some, me and Joe time rather than anything else. And I made that, it was the start of my realization that I have the choice and I have the power to decide how I feel about something rather than letting everything else
It's
influence
very
me.
easy to get swept up in
Right.
the minor details. So how does that sort of to correlate that
Mm.
experience to you then as a
Yep.
leader?
Yep.
Because, if you can put that much pressure on yourself and care that much about the details
Yep.
of what you're going to wear on the beach,
I know.
how does
I
that,
know.
no, but, how does that translate into, all the various elements of
Yeah.
being a leader of hundreds, if not
Yeah.
thousands of employees across the region?
So that point
Mm.
about choice,
Yeah.
conscious decisions, and where do I put my energy, that I use every single day. So I used the analogy a little bit earlier on of the plate spinning.
Yeah.
I'm a busy person. I have tried to find my off switch very many times. I don't think I have one, but I have a dial,
Okay.
right? And I use that choice and that decision making and my energy flows, and I dial it up and down
Yeah.
based on my own priorities. And sometimes those priorities are sports day. And sometimes those priorities are budget meetings or client meetings or strategy, whatever it needs to be. So I'm quite planful about where I put my energy. I try to work to balance my day, my week, my month.
Mm.
It never happens on a daily basis. Forget it, right? Days come and go. But at least on a weekly and a monthly basis, I try to create balance in my ability to perform. And I don't mean that in a inauthentic way, but one of the biggest realizations for me, and I've been in this role now for the last year or so, is I don't know that the pressure is any different from my previous roles.
Mm.
Is equally intense, different intense, but equally intense. But one thing I'm very, very aware of is the visibility. Everyone's watching you. Not not in a good way or a bad way, but everyone is observing you. So there's no space for a low mood day. There's no space for a bad hair day. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel that I need to present the best version of myself for the benefit of the team. And I think that is that is intense and that is pressure.
I
And
was
that's
going to
where
say
I
that
use that
sounds,
dial
yeah,
to try and manage it.
that dial process that you have, is that something you've always had, or is that something you've learned over time?
I've definitely learned it over time.
Yeah.
Um, everyone would always say, like, would ask you the question, like, how do you switch off? What do you do to switch off?
Yeah.
And again, I spend a lot of time reflecting on, well, how do I switch off? You know, we've every summer or every Christmas or whatever those milestones are of times when you switch off, right? Societally, you switch off for a period of time. I've often, my husband has challenged me. He's like, what is going to work for you? What do we need? A week, 2 weeks, 10 days, 3 weeks? Like, is it multi-center? Is it one place? Is it staying at home? Is it staying in in your pajamas? Like, what is it? And we sort of tried and tested it. And I realized I really am rubbish at switching off.
Okay.
So that's when I sort of started to think about, okay, well, if off doesn't work for me,
Doesn't exist even.
let's just accept
Yeah.
it. If off is not a state that I do, then there's low, right? I can dial like a dimmer
Yeah.
switch, right?
Yeah.
I can dial, and it's more about energy, right? So I like to be around people. The best thing I do to relax myself is cook
Okay.
and host friends and cook for people. That's not relaxing. Actually, that's
No.
quite stressful, but it's different. And I love doing it because my mind goes to a different place, right? That's my creative space.
So you're a lot more conscious about where you spend your energy.
Very, very much
Like
so.
that's almost like presenteeism in a way, isn't it? In that
Yeah.
you're focusing on what works for you
Yeah.
more than, so perhaps what, 5, 10 years you wouldn't even think about it in that way.
Kids were massively pivotal for me, as I think they were probably for everybody.
Yeah.
Um, I, until that first little baby came along, I didn't I didn't realize what it was. No offense to my family or my husband, but I didn't realize what it was to have something else that was more important than what other else I was loving doing. And I've always loved work. I've always been very, very lucky to bounce out of bed most mornings
Yeah.
and want to go to work, and I feel blessed for that. But then suddenly I had this little guy that, I mean, honestly, he improved my efficiency at work. Suddenly it's really, I would procrastinate about things for hours. I did it in 20 minutes. And yeah, maybe I did it at 85, 90, my 85 or 90% rather than my, usual 120% or whatever, but no one noticed. So that context was huge to raising my consciousness. So that's what, nearly 11 years ago
Yeah.
now. of raising my consciousness of not sweating the little stuff, don't need to get involved in politics or ego or anything like that. Suddenly, the things that were around me that did used to influence me, or I could remember getting my like heart rate going,
Mhm.
not bothered.
Made you a better leader, perhaps?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I think it made me a better person. I think it made me a more balanced
Mm.
person. Um, yeah,
So I'm going to transition into some of the work that we've been doing again.
yeah,
With that in mind, that kind of how that's changed you both as a person and as a leader. Um, Obviously, we've collaborated on the healthcare study that
yep,
Cigna Healthcare does every year, the international study where you look around the globe
yep.
how people's mental health is doing, and particularly employees' mental health is doing. Um, we'll get into the figures in a minute, but your takeaway, your top sort of takeaway from the research before we get into the specific figures of where do you think leadership's at? Because you seem to have arrived or evolved or grown through family, through
Hmm.
personal experience into a place where you feel that you've improved as a leader.
Yeah.
Where do you think leadership is at right now, globally and here in the region?
I think every company, every individual goes on their own journey, right? I think I've been incredibly fortunate to have had great role models over the years and also to work in organizations that have quite positive cultures.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I know of others, let me put it that way, where people don't feel that way,
Yeah.
right? They don't feel that they have that space for growth and learning and perhaps failure and things like that. So, I mean, there's so much content out there now about leadership. One would have thought that you could, read the 50, 100 books or podcasts, listen to the podcast or whatever, and just miraculously be this incredible leader. But I don't think that's the case either. Um, I think it's very much about experience. I think it's about personality. I think a massive piece of leadership is about self awareness. And I think without being conscious that I've been on a journey of self-awareness. I think that's what it's been. And not, like I say, not consciously, not in a structured way. It's just I've learnt to know myself better. I was also fortunate enough to do some coaching, executive coaching in my sort of the lead up to my appointment as CEO,
Mm.
and we did a ton of psychological assessments and all sorts of things like that, which were fascinating because it really opened my eyes, and they were very accurate, scarily so. Um, but really opened my eyes to the things that could be derailers
Hmm.
that I really need to manage as a leader, and areas that are really positive and I should, reinforce, if you like. So I think you have to invest to be a leader. I think there are many fantastic leaders, but I also think that a lot of people fall into management, and some people can take that step to leadership and distinguishing management and leadership. I think some people can take that step, um, and many can't. And I think there's probably not enough. And it's one of the things that we've been doing with our team this year is reinforcing those foundational management training, if you like, and
Yeah.
techniques, and building confidence around those things because that forms the basis of culture in workplaces.
We've had this kind of, I mean, you're absolutely a million percent, gelling with my sort of experience in the world I've come from, which was journalism, which was
Mm.
people got on, in general,
Yeah,
sadly, men, got promoted because they were good at a process
absolutely. Yeah.
rather than they were identified as good leaders of teams. And I have, and I've had some great bosses, some great mentors. 90% of the great mentors were women who were leading newspapers, I will say. But I've also had some really bad experiences in workplaces. I have some sympathy, having been promoted myself through the
Yep.
process. I remember getting into management and being the abused becomes the abuser, because it was the only way I was shown.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to go on that journey
Mm.
that you've gone on as well. But no one's ever trained, or there's so little training around, well, there's so little thought in identifying a candidate. Are they good for leading people?
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
how they teach, how do you teach someone to be a leader?
Yeah.
That process you went on with the executive coaching,
Yeah.
you said there were things that could be derailers and
Yeah.
things that you should be leaning into.
Yeah.
Do you mind me asking what some of those derailers might have been, and what some of those, but
Oh,
balance that with
secrets.
what the positives were? Like, what's the things that leaders should be looking out for that could be there in the background that are those derailers?
Yeah. So the sorts of things that we talked about. So
Mm.
we went through, all of the various different psychological assessments, um, and sort of aggregated them together and started to look at it. So good things. I'm going to start with good,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, totally.
glass half full and all that. Good things were things like emotional
Yeah.
intelligence, um, interpersonal skills, communication skills, being able to take complex problems and be pragmatic about solutions.
Okay.
Um, is that sort of you're probably familiar with the sort of like the disc profile and
Yes.
the sort of the different colors, right? The sort of red, the yellow, the green, and the blue.
Yeah.
And it's actually something that we've just rolled out using insights at Cigna more broadly,
Okay.
because again, back to this self-awareness journey. So I think that those insights for me are great, because it's about how do I know how I am experienced by other people, and how I also communicate with other people about what I need from them, and how they as a person. So one of the things that I would do with the executive coach is we go through sort of key stakeholders, right? So a stakeholder analysis. Where do I think they have preferences, right? How do they like to be communicated with? And in turn, how do I need to adapt my style to be able to influence them?
Mm-hmm.
So my boss is a very blue person, blue and red. So he's very numbers oriented. He's very detail oriented. So I can be very verbose, if you haven't noticed. I can, I have, I use words rather than numbers. And so I've had to really adapt my style and invest in my learning. I mean, I went off and did an EMBA, for goodness sake, to make sure that I had the right level of business acumen to be able to operate as a leader at that level and in the space that I'm operating. So on the derailer side, it was interestingly, it's the overuse of your strengths. So this interpersonal skills, loving hanging out with people, well, sometimes I can get a little bit troublesome, right? Sometimes I relax a little bit too much and just get a little bit naughty. I've got like a little naughty side. And that's great. Like, if you think about interpersonal skills and building relationships and
Yeah.
things like that, you need a little bit of that.
Yeah.
But there's a time and a place.
Yeah.
And so it's about being aware of that and just making sure that little person on my shoulder is like, keep it in check, Leah, keep it in check. So getting maybe too comfortable, for example.
Fascinating. we were looking, and every year we work together on and we're a couple of months away from
Yeah.
the 2025,
2025
which I
release.
can't wait.
Yes.
The international healthcare study that is evolved over the last sort of 5 years,
Yeah.
and particularly the last 3 years that we've been collaborating on. But if we have a look back at the 2024
Yep.
figures, cause still very, very valid.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, the statistics in that report that really stood out to me, almost more than anything else, was this kind of imbalance between the fact that, because if you talk to a kind of traditional CEO, they want more productivity, and there's this kind of assumption that the workforce is lazy. But actually, what came through from the internet,
Yeah.
from the report last year was that, was it 80% of people
Yep.
were willing to work hard
That's
to
right.
help their organization.
Yep.
And I think 75% of people were enthusiastic about their job.
Yep.
Yeah, on the flip side,
But
on the flip side, was it almost like 2/3 of people,
63. Yeah. Yeah.
63% of employees were looking to leave their job.
Yeah.
And many of them, I can't remember the exact statistic, but it was around the same level,
Mm-hmm.
felt that their manager didn't
Didn't.
care about their mental
That's right.
health.
Yeah.
How can we be in this imbalance? I mean, it's a fascinating set of results that
Yeah.
come out every year.
We debated this long and hard, and I know you and I have had conversations, but
Yeah.
we've had many conversations internally as well. I suspect
Mm.
that it's one of those interesting dynamics of the UAE. Think about pretty much all of us as expatriates that are chosen UAE as home. We've probably got some common characteristics, right? Either we are here to further our career,
Mhm.
we are here to earn money
Mhm.
in a way that we couldn't do back home, and and therefore we're probably supporting families back home. So we're quite motivated, shall we say, um, and we're living in kind of a place where, I mean, Dubai's slogan is "Impossible is possible." Right? So if you think about and just look at what's happening around us, right? You mentioned traffic a little bit earlier on. The new underpasses that have just opened up.
I know. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just like, one day I drive down and it's a building site, and the next day there's an 8-lane underpass. Just the pace of change and rapid development. I just wonder whether there is just, that means that everyone has just sort of got their eyes and ears open to, well, you know what? If there is another opportunity, yeah, heck, I would take it.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I also am acutely aware that my ability to be here and stay here and earn that money to send home, or keep the pretty good job that I've got, or whatever that personal dynamic for you is, that the reason that you're here. In the meantime, I know I'm going to have to work hard because the standards are pretty high. And I also know, let's face it, that employment law is not massively in favor of the employee. And therefore, if I were to not meet the standards
Mm.
and I were to be let go, my life gets turned upside down in a space of 30 days.
See, that's fascinating as well, because I've actually seen, and I've lived this as well,
Yeah.
the UE going on a big journey around that one, which I'm not quite sure is communicated as much as it should have. But if we think about the way that the law has actually changed,
Mm.
it used to be 30 days, but it's
Yeah.
not 30 days anymore, it's 6 months. There are many people
Okay.
now who've got the green visas or the 10-year visas as
Yep.
well, which
Yep.
which means
Change
that
some of those dynamics.
it changes some of those dynamics. And actually, and I've been through this process, that the employment courts, the labour courts, are actually a lot more open. In fact, if you're seeking a level of compensation that's under 100,000 dirhams,
Mm.
it's actually free to put your case there. So
Yeah.
it feels like the government knows that there is a pressure there. And if we tie that into, like, Dubai Health Authority's got
Yep.
the new mental wealth framework,
Absolutely. Yep.
105 million dirham project
Yep.
over
It's
5 years.
incredible.
And again, to your point, they're talking about the pace of life here.
Yeah.
Because, and I remember that figure from the UEE report from the global research we did last year from
Yeah.
Cigna Healthcare, 82% of people in the UEE feeling stress, employees
Yeah.
feeling
And
stressed.
99% with burnout symptoms.
99% with
Yeah.
burnout from the year before. Again, some of the highest levels. So we're in this really interesting
Yeah.
paradox,
Yeah.
which is overall well-being.
Yeah.
If I remember, was the vitality, the UEE was
78.
78,
Yeah.
scoring really, really highly,
Yeah.
far higher
Than the
than the
global.
global average,
Hmm.
but still in terms of stress and in terms of
Yep.
burnout, still really, really higher than the global averages as well.
That's right.
And it's,
Yeah. And they dropped, right?
yeah,
So the social indicator, the mental health indicator, and the financial health indicators had all dropped. So I think you've got the
yeah,
stress coming through
yeah,
from that sort of pace of life.
yeah.
You've got the cost of living issue, the inflation, not just here, but potentially in home countries as well, where people are supporting families. And then you've got that potential social isolation of, I don't have my family here.
Yeah.
And that loneliness piece that sort of seemed to reemerge
That
post
loneliness piece
COVID.
really came through a bit last year
Yeah.
as well. It'd be interesting to see
What
what
happens
happens
this
this
year?
year. I mean, I remember those, what was it, the US Surgeon General talking about
Yes.
how loneliness is a real issue.
Yeah.
It's physically bad for us. I think he quoted it to
Yeah.
being 14, 15 cigarettes a day.
Yeah.
That was the physical impact of loneliness on it. With all of this, we've got the burnout, we've got the pace of life, we've got loneliness.
Mm.
What's the challenge then for employers? Because again, like I think sleep's a different. And I remember actually sleep was
Sleep
in.
was one of the major symptoms,
Yeah,
wasn't it, that people were reporting that indicated that there was something off.
but how often do we hear employers talking about? Well, like so, employers might be having the conversation about flexibility,
Yeah.
and actually, what we're seeing is, and again, that was an interesting point from last year as well, where the employees still want the flexibility. The employees maybe don't want they're trying to drag people back in
Yeah.
to the offices, but that flexibility still was super important
Yeah.
to people,
Yeah.
particularly mothers and women. I think
Yeah.
also came out from that research.
Yeah.
So, what is that challenge for employers? Because and how do they approach the modern landscape of work? Because we've got your statistics telling us that our employees still value flexibility.
Yeah.
They're struggling with loneliness. They're struggling with sleep. They're struggling with that work-life balance. They're stressed. And yet we know that they're willing to work hard for us, and actually they're enthusiastic about work. So we don't
Yeah.
have a major problem with the people in terms of their attitude,
Yeah.
but we do have a problem with the landscape we're creating for them to flourish in.
Yeah. Yeah. It's when you put it like that. I think, unpacking a few of
Yeah.
those pieces, right? So we talked about leadership
Yeah.
and this management piece, and you also mentioned earlier on that employees reporting that managers, they don't feel supported by managers, or
Yeah.
managers don't care about their mental health,
Mm.
right? So I think that's one piece of that sort of overall jigsaw puzzle related to employer culture,
Yeah.
which probably can can get fixed, right? That's something that can be worked on with the right organizational culture and focus. Um, it's great that employees are happy to come to work and willing and excited even
Yeah.
about the what they need to do. I think this hybrid piece, even if you look at the government, Sharjah went to 4 days. Summer 4 days in
Government departments.
Dubai for government
Yeah.
departments. That's right. So there's definitely, let's face it, the schools are 4.5 days
Yeah.
a week. There is definitely this nudge, shall we say, at the federal level,
Yeah.
or at least at the emirate level, towards encouraging employers to operate differently.
Yeah.
And I certainly know that some partners that we work with have in the private sector, interestingly, smaller companies are making that choice that will do 4.5 days, or that one Friday a month we have off. and it's positioned very much as it's, about balance.
Yeah.
Whether that's enough or whether that just means that you do 5 days work, 5 lots of 12 hours in 4.5,
Yeah.
I don't know, right? And I think that's the big challenge with any flexibility is what is the issue? Is the issue that of flexibility, or is the issue that of pace and workload? And is it just too much? We talk a lot about focus in our organization because we have an incredible team, talented, willing, motivated. But if you ask too much of people, can't get it done, right? So I think that there's probably multiple dimensions that are playing through that are sort of giving us this situation. And also, people don't want to go back home either.
No.
How many
No.
conversations will we both have after the summer where people come back from home country and say, I'm so glad to be back. So in spite of everything, I'm so glad to be back. And remember that those numbers are still over the global
Yeah.
averages, right? So, in 2 months' time, this place is going to be, we're going to be delighted for 6 months,
Yes.
right? And I
Because the
think
weather's going to be
weather's
beautiful.
going to, yeah,
We come back into that, the figure that stands out, the UAE and Saudi Arabia to a degree as well, with
absolutely.
that vitality that people, overall vitality,
Yeah,
you know, there are very good things happening in
yeah,
this part of the world, and
yeah.
the weather, the security, the safety, the money, the ability to get promoted.
Absolutely, the opportunity. But I think going back to what can employers and what should employers and leaders be thinking about, I'm not convinced yet that enough companies or leaders believe that there is a correlation between employee wellness, vitality, health in its broadest sense, and productivity. And I think in part, there's a little bit of commoditization of talent in that.
Mm.
Sorry, I know that's really, that's a tough comment to make, but I think there is a little bit of commoditization in the, in the broader market. Um, and there's lots of companies that stand out as great places to work, and but they're the ones that really lead from the top down in terms of showing people that it's okay to have a flexible diary, right? Because there's one thing saying that we have flexible work and then the CEO being in their office for 15 hours a
Yeah.
day, right?
And
So
I've worked in those organizations, and I've had the conversation when I'm going home to my daughter, having done a 12-hour day,
yeah,
and it is conversation, you don't leave the office until I leave the
yeah,
office.
that
And I think,
and that still exists a
yeah,
lot.
we still have that, and I think there was a big piece of research around that Oxford University did,
Yes.
which is around, if you put the pool table in the middle of the office, but nobody dare play on it,
Yeah.
you're actually causing more
Yeah.
resentment within your workforce.
Yeah.
Um, how have you, so within Cigna, you've Cigna Healthcare across the region, you'll have hundreds if you may. How many employees roughly?
Within Cigna, we're about 500 in the Middle East
Yeah.
and another 450 in Africa.
Okay. Um, I know that I'm asking you a question I kind of know some of the answers to, but what are the steps you've taken to try and improve that culture within? I mean, I remember the 5% pledge, which
Yeah.
I'll ask you to talk a little bit about.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what are the things you've done to kind of make sure that the culture within Cigna Healthcare has continued to evolve?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to add an addendum onto that, which is to come back to the question the thing you were saying just then. Do you firmly believe in that correlation between employee well-being and the P&L performance, the productivity?
I can answer that question straight away. I do firmly believe that there is a direct correlation between employee, let's call it vitality,
Yeah.
shall we, and the P&L. For us at Cigna, and Middle East and Africa, but I think there's a much broader belief in that across the organization, which also comes top down from David and at the enterprise. Our people and our talent is our differentiator. So frankly, don't tell anyone, but anyone can pay a claim, right?
Hmm.
Anyone can set up a network, but that's not what it's about, right? We're in a business of caring.
Yeah.
And we have to have the right culture in our organization. If we look after our people, then our people will look after our clients and our customers and our partners. And that's
So that
that.
ripples all the way through the value chain
ab-
of what the
Absolutely.
company
Absolutely.
provides.
And so that's growth because we have a solution that the market wants to buy, and that's differentiation. And with
Mm.
differentiation, then you can generate profit from differentiation.
It seems, I mean, so much these days as well, like we're in a much more knowledge driven society.
Mm,
Many jobs are service orientated in
yes.
some way, shape, or form,
Yeah.
whether it be hospitality, whether it be the healthcare systems. Um, Again, that translation to if your people are better, they provide better service.
Yeah.
And then that becomes your differentiator, which then eventually plays out into your P&Ls.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's the adage of, and again, it comes back to service in general, but also from a leadership perspective, is you remember how people make you feel. And if we are going to create that for me, for our teams, and for our teams, for our clients and our customers, then we have to surround them and create a culture in which they can operate and feel like they really want to do that. You can't force it,
Yeah.
right? That's not a process, and that's not AI either, right? That's the other dynamic to this is
Yeah.
there are what I really hope we will get to in our organization and more broadly is that we can have technology and AI really augment our people. And then our people can focus more and more on that interpersonal connection and creating differentiation and experience for,
Which
for,
deepens
for
your relationship
customers.
with your customers.
Exactly, which again, back to ripple effect.
I'm going to throw one last piece of research just for those listening to the podcast, but we did some recent research as well,
Yeah.
which was, based on the Gallup Global State of the Workplace,
Yeah.
and the cost to UE businesses each year from disengaged employees,
Yeah.
$42 billion a year, $43 billion a year, actually, which equated to $24 million per hour.
Wow.
On the flip side, big piece of research this year from McKinsey and the World Economic Forum,
Mm.
which showed that the return on investment from well-being, $60 billion a year in the UAE,
Wow.
or more than $40 million per hour.
Mm.
So it's there in black and white. I'm just, again, come back to, perhaps the CEO doesn't recognize it yet, but I wonder why the chief financial officers are not screaming about all of this.
But back to
Yeah.
my blue quadrant,
Yeah.
it needs what is not, the prescription is not clear, let's put it that way, of what exactly well-being is.
Mm.
Um, the philosophy is clear. And I think we've worked hard to try and raise awareness with our clients about what are those component parts of and what makes employee wellness or vitality or what helps build culture, right? So it's around the psychological safety,
Yeah.
it's around making sure that people have got tools that they can use preventively and in the moment of crisis if they need, making sure that they've got manager support, making sure they've got the right benefits in place, all of that sort of stuff. But it's it's not a tick box exercise. And I think that means that it requires real effort. And I think that's where the disconnect is between those two statistics, right? How much you lose versus how much you could gain.
Yeah.
Um, it's that belief in what exactly do I need to do? Because, I mean, candidly, there's tons of research, tons of reports, loads of consultants would be very happy to develop a strategy for you. But unless you've got the right leaders with the right mindset and you see that through from your, right the way through your talent acquisition to your processes to your line managers, you it's a journey. Let me just put it this way. It's a journey, right?
We're going to neatly segue, I think, into the awards in a second now, because I do want to talk about it while I've got you here as a
Yeah,
judge this year.
please.
But one of the projects that Cigna Healthcare pioneered that did win an award 3 years
Yes.
ago was that 5% pledge,
Yeah.
which looked at leadership and leadership's making time and space for this conversation.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about what the 5% pledge was designed to achieve
Yeah.
and what you learnt on that road.
Yeah. When 5% came out, I'm going to admit I was a tiny bit skeptical.
Okay.
Okay. I looked at my diary, it was 5%, 2 hours a week, according to, contracted working 2 hours a
Yeah.
week. I really want to do this, but heck, how?
Yeah.
How am I going to do it? Because I'm going to create more stress on me by trying to create the right environment for other people. So philosophically, I'm absolutely supportive, but how? Then I chilled out a bit and thought about it and reflected and had lots of conversations, right? Which was, it doesn't have to be dedicated specific time, right? It's more about the how you're spending your time. Maybe you spend 10 minutes walking through the office a couple of times a week. Hi, how are you? How's things going? How's the, just connecting with people.
Mm.
Being aware and noticing if perhaps someone's not having a great day or doesn't appear to be their usual self, if you like, just taking them off for a coffee and is everything okay? So I think that we started to reconcile within our organization, to be honest with you, of what exactly did it mean,
Mm.
and how could we feel authentic and comfortable in doing that as leaders. And again, everyone's different, right? So some people will find that sort of very comfortable and other people a bit more sort of, process oriented about it. The big step for me actually was Cigna International at that time had identified, I think there was 15, 16 of us right across the globe. And they offered to train us as certified coaches. So they took a subset of leaders and said, "We will pay. We'll invest in you. Um, you invest the time, and in return, you'll get your qualification. But we're going to ask you to support a cohort of coachees within the organization." So I did that. And it was a massive investment of time. It was like 60 hours of classroom training, and then 100 hours of coaching hours before you could then take the exam. So
That is a lot
that
of
that was
time
quite
to
a
build
that
in.
was
Yeah.
quite a commitment.
Yeah.
But it was one of the most worthwhile and powerful things I think I've done, because it has given me again another perspective, right? I love building context and perspective, and it's given me another opportunity to connect with our team and teams across the globe on a whole other level, right? So I physically tell people when we're having these coaching sessions that I've taken my Leah Cigna hat off and I've put my Leah coach hat on, um, and that for me is the legacy of the 5% pledge for me personally. I have benefited from it. It's been win-win for me because I feel so fulfilled coming out of coaching sessions where people are like, "Oh my gosh, like 50 minutes, an hour has flown by, and God, I knew this all along, and yet I like it took an hour with you to work it out." And I just love it. So I think that for me is the legacy of 5%. And I know, lots of other people have found their sort of, little
Their own
ways that they're
5%.
contributing, but it's become quite embedded in the culture now. We don't necessarily, you don't ask, how have you, what have you done for your 5% pledge this week, month, quarter, or whatever. But it's very much a leadership approach.
So it's
Right,
almost like creating the habit.
right, right. Yeah, but have it in a really positive, like
Yeah.
not in a forced way. Do you know
No.
what I mean? It
Yeah.
took a little bit of everyone finding their way.
Yeah.
Um, and again, that top down piece, I can't reiterate enough, is so important.
One of the things I've found sort of powerful about that 5%, and it was all the way, it wasn't just specifically from the top, it was the top, but then it was the middle managers as
Yes.
well.
Yep.
And we
Yep.
know that middle managers actually
Yeah.
sometimes struggle more
Yep.
inside organizations because they've got responsibilities up and responsibilities down. But what would you say the ROI is in terms of just taking the time to think about the mental health? Because sometimes organizations don't know where to get started.
No.
But the one thing they don't put in is the time. And
Yeah.
I think this one of the central foundations of 5% was
It's
take
time.
time.
Yeah. And I think we all feel that we're time poor,
Yeah.
right? That's the number one deficit. That's the one thing you can't get more of or get back, right? In life.
Sadly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, exactly. But in life, that's the case. So I think it's, it's time and it's energy, right? I think that's the other side of 5% pledge is got to be, I use the word authentic.
Hmm.
It's got to be really genuine and and authentic. So I think ROI, I think there's ROI within the team. So it builds that my manager cares about my mental health.
Yeah.
Um,
Which correlates with the
which
63%
correlates with
who
the
don't feel that.
that's
Yeah.
exactly right. So I think it builds empathy um within that middle management layer, right? We're a very matrix organization, so sort of everybody works together. So we're not in very siloed. So I think it builds that empathy across the team, and everyone did 5%, by the way, as well. It was encouraged, obviously, at a management level, but I think really everyone got on board with it and found their way to contribute with their peers or
Mm.
or whatever. We talked quite a lot about this concept of it's okay not to be okay. And so, that awareness piece, and then seeing how many people were actually willing to be vulnerable. So I think, and putting numbers on these things is incredibly difficult, isn't it? But I think it really brought the team closer. And we've really tried to build on that momentum through various different, sort of events and things like that.
Yeah.
Women's health, men's health, people coming forward and being quite vulnerable about their experiences and how they feel, and things that have gone well, but also things that haven't gone
Mm.
well, and creating that environment of open door, right? Of openness, both from a leadership and an HR perspective.
Is that one of the intangible but undeniable benefits? I'm asking you a loaded question around all of this conversations about well-being. Is that how it feels to work in an organization? There is actually an ROI to how it feels to be inside an organization that cares about you.
Absolutely. And it's those critical moments, isn't it? It's those, we talk about it in our customer journey as moments that matter.
Mm.
But it's the same when it's an employee,
Yeah.
right? When something happens and you can't do what you expected to be able to do, and your manager says, "Don't worry about it." Right? My mum was ill earlier this year, and I waited and I waited, and I just said, "I'm like, I need to go." And no one questioned it a thing. Go, focus. I got checked in on in a really nice
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
by the team around me, by the group president of Cigna checked in on me to make sure everything was okay. Is there anything you can do to support? Take the time that you need. It's those critical moments that I know I've been lucky I haven't had too many of them,
Yeah.
thankfully. But when they do happen, that everyone just gives you the space, right? And checks in, but gives you the space. And if I can help make others feel that way, and again, but it comes back to culture, right? This
It seems like the secret.
undefinable thing, which is culture.
Seems like it's the secret source of
Yes.
loyalty and commitment, and that
Mm.
80% of people wanting to work harder for your
Yeah.
organization. But it doesn't seem like it should be rocket science, but somehow so many
Yeah.
leaderships still cut themselves off from that intangible feeling
Mm.
side
Yeah.
of an organization, that compassion within
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
organization. But I think compassion actually will add cash to your bottom line.
Yeah.
It's just, I could talk about it as a talking about I could talk about that all day and get on my soapbox, and I talk about this a bit too much perhaps. Talking about organizations that care about their people, and this is for me to jump in and do a little bit of advert.
Go for it.
We're sat here in the Folly Brasserie
Beautiful.
Montgomery Address Hotel here in Dubai. On November the 21st, we're going to be celebrating organizations who help and people to thrive
Yeah.
in the Mental Awards. So
Yeah.
November the 21st. Entries are open now from across the UAE, but also the rest of the GCC, Saudi, Qatar, Bahrain, Oman. We want your entries in. Entries will close at the end of September. So enter. You've been a judge for us. You
Yes.
judged entries last year. What did you see? And how did you feel about that process? The people that were entering, the companies that were entering. What
Yeah.
did you see, and your just general impressions of the
Yeah.
awards last year?
Yeah, and kudos to you, Scott, for really leading the way with the mental awards, and your raising awareness and focus on it. So thank you. Um, the judging process was really eye-opening. I'd never heard of many of these companies or entities that were or groups of people, right, that were doing wonderful things in the community. What struck me most was probably the fact that, well, at least the ones that were most impactful for me
Yeah.
were organizations that had come together to meet a very specific need, or more specifically, unmet need.
Hmm.
So there were, focus on how do you support healthcare, the mental health of healthcare workers,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
For example, or how do you support the mental health of people in communities, rural communities? So I think what that reinforced for me is that everybody's mental health journey, everyone's health journey, people's needs are very diverse. And we need those specialisms. We need interest groups. We need support groups for postnatal support, menopause support, you know, andropause support,
Yeah.
right? Right. There's so many, if I go back to the UK, where I know, you and I are from, you take for granted the number of support groups, not commercial interests
Mm.
necessarily, but support groups that exist in the community. Um, and I think that's building here. And I think what you're doing as well is really sort of encouraging and reinforcing the value of that. But I think for me, it was the one size doesn't fit all, right? You don't just have something that supports mental health, right? It's very, very specific, and the needs of individuals and individual cohorts is really nuanced.
I think that's one of the principles that we tried to tackle as well, was the fact that it's open to all industries,
Yes.
private and public sector,
Yeah.
because every different industry has its
Yeah.
sort of different challenges. So it's interesting to see how each individual industry,
Yes.
whether it be service industry, where people are perhaps sat in an office at a computer all day,
Yeah.
versus say retail or hospitality or indeed healthcare, to your
Yeah.
point, where people are on their feet a lot,
Yeah.
in healthcare or indeed the emergency services, dealing
Yeah.
quite traumatic situations. So how do we
Absolutely.
support all of those?
Yeah.
One more sales pitch for me. You attended and you handed out some awards for us at the award dinner last year,
Yes.
which was at Expo City. Fantastic. What was your impressions of the night, and what would you say to any organization that's thinking of entering the awards of this year, particularly where we're going to be holding the reception this year?
I was going to say, I mean, first and foremost, this place, Folly, is absolutely stunning. And when the weather cools down,
Yeah.
that terrace outside, November 21st, definitely needs to go
So
in the
reception's
diary.
going to be in
So
here.
reception's going to be fab.
Dinner's going to be
Yep.
outside by the fountains, by the lakes. So,
Yeah.
and shout out to Naeem from Gates Hospitality, who's been a judge for the awards since year one. And
Yep.
Gates Hospitality, Folly is their brand. So we're deeply grateful to be working with them,
Yeah.
and also deeply grateful to Cigna Healthcare for sponsoring for the third year in a row.
Of course. Of course.
Why was it important for you to sponsor the awards? Why was it important for you to support us? I'm deeply grateful, but I'm wondering what what the conversation you had your side was.
Sure. What you do, Scott, is bringing to life the vision and mission of our organization, right? Right from the US down, our objective is to improve the health and vitality of those that we serve and the communities that we operate in, right? So, I think we found synergy a lot along the way, and and great partner, and we're delighted to be supporting what you're doing.
I'm going to say thank you. Thomas Erickson taught me that. I interviewed him and he said something nice and he was just like, Scott, just shut up, stop putting yourself down, just say thank you and accept the gift of the compliment. So, the author is surrounded by idiots. So he was a judge last year for us as well, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, that's brilliant, and thank you, and again, thank you for the support. Entries open right now. You don't want to miss the evening. It's going to be very, very special, but also it's just incredibly special to honor the work you guys are doing.
Yeah.
So if you're helping lift others up, please enter the awards. You've been very generous with your time.
Oh.
Just looking ahead, because we've got you yourself have got a busy schedule at
Yep.
Cigna Healthcare. We've got obviously this year's international study coming
Yeah.
through.
Yep.
What are you looking forward to, or what are you seeing on the horizon that you're excited for, or indeed you think may be a challenge? But how are you going to be supporting your employees over the next year? What's coming down the road?
Yeah. So we've talked a lot organizationally about change.
Yeah.
Change is the only constant after all. So we've been talking a lot about preparedness for change, resilience, and that's somewhat in the context of sort of the whole AI, evolution, if you like. Not that not that I think we're ready, if I'm honest, but how do we help upskill our people to be able to leverage the efficiency that technology is giving us? So I'm always really focused on continuous improvement, and I think intellectual well-being is one of those dimensions of overall health, and if we can help the team be as skilled as possible, be the best versions of themselves, right? I hope they'll stay with Cigna, but you know what? If we create great talent for the market and there are other opportunities,
Yeah.
then you know what? That's okay as well. Um, but so we're running some master classes. We're doing a lot of reinforcing management training. I'm quite excited about a program that we've got coming up, which is around tackling difficult conversations, crucial conversations.
Okay.
So I think all of that comes back to employee experience, and crucial conversations doesn't necessarily need to be about difficult conversations, right? That could be conversations with clients or customers, or quite frankly, at home. Because we also, let's face it, what happens at home comes to the workplace, and what happens in the workplace goes home.
Yeah.
So I think it's about just general continuous development and continuous improvement. And we expect a lot of our team, and I want to make sure that we're contributing back to them to help them grow.
that, I mean, you sparked me in three different directions when I said this was
Oh.
going to be a closing. When I said this was going to be a closing question, but I mean that last point you make, which is a really interesting one. You remind me of that whole, you know, the HR to the CEO, which is, well, the CEO says, "What happens if I invest in my people and they leave?"
Yeah.
And the HR response being, "What happens if you
You
don't invest and they stay?"
Yeah.
So there's that aspect of it. Also looking at the future. I mean, we've just had a report. We were writing about it on
Mm.
the mental.space website yesterday. EY's just come out with a big report looking at millennials and Gen Zs.
Yep.
51% globally, and actually in Saudi, which is representative of this region, 56%
Yeah.
of respondents saying that money is no longer the driver for them, that they might work for 5 to 6 organizations through their life rather
Yeah.
than 2 to 3,
Yeah.
but also that they now prioritize mental health and physical health as one,
Yeah.
and money's only third. Physical and mental health is the number one priority.
Yeah.
Now, if organizations are going to flourish in this age of
Yeah.
technological evolution,
Yeah.
both AI and software,
Yeah.
we're going to need to employees are going to need to take account of that, aren't they?
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's I totally agree. And I think if you were to ask me what keeps me up at night,
Yeah. What
I
keeps you
think,
up at night,
yeah,
Leah?
great question. I would have to say there's two things. One is something around cybersecurity,
Yeah.
and the other one is around how we evolve to embrace generational differences
Mm.
in the
Yeah.
workplace. And I think I'm slightly biased towards that, given the fact that I've got two sort of kids, 9 and 10,
Yeah.
and I know that I'm going to have to deal with it. So,
Yeah.
and I need to I need to get into that mindset, right? I need to appreciate it. I need to understand it better. I need to be able to communicate in a different way.
It's going to be a challenge for, you know, the existing subset of leadership that are, you know, we kind of, I think you're a little younger than I am, but that attitude to work
Yeah.
when we enter the workplace is very, very
Very
different.
different.
I see my boy, he's 24 years old and he's doing well in an aerospace engineering company.
Amazing.
But when you see his approach
Yeah.
and his attitude to what, you know, that's another thing that came out of this EY study, that
Mm.
for us, life revolved around work, and then
Yeah.
everything else happened outside of that.
Exactly.
That seems to have fundamentally changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not sure organizations are as, or they're as ill prepared for that as they are for what's going to happen year on year on year on year on
Yeah.
year with AI.
Yeah. And we've just launched our first graduate development program, specifically for Emirati graduates,
Right.
Ajada. So we are looking forward in the next week or so to welcoming a dozen fresh graduates, which is incredibly exciting. But I'm also very conscious, and we've been doing a lot of work in the organization about how do we make sure that we are attractive
Mhm.
in the first instance.
Mm.
We're an insurance company after all, right? It's not, it's not the sexiest industry, but we have purpose, right?
Yeah.
Our organization has purpose, and we've really led with that from the sort of employee value proposition perspective. So I'm wildly excited about these folks joining us, but I'm also very conscious and feel very responsible for how we integrate them into the organization, how we evolve our culture so that we remain relevant and we maintain our identity to our staff that have been there forever, like
Yeah.
me and others, but
Yeah.
also that we are attractive to 21, 22-year-olds that have just graduated from university. It's a big deal
Because you
for
need them.
us
Because
because
you
of
need it.
course we
Because
need them and we
yeah,
want them,
for
right?
long term.
We want, we need, because we are not just selling to people like me, right? I am no longer representative of the workforce.
Yeah.
Right? The workforce is different. Our products, our solutions, the way we communicate needs to evolve. We need to stop sending emails and newsletters, right? people consume content differently.
Yeah.
You know that better than anyone else.
Absolutely. Well, and there's a
Um,
plug for our Connect for Health webinar and podcast that we do every month,
There we
talking
go.
to customers
go.
and the wider audience. I said that you sparked me off in 3 different directions. I'm gonna, and it's a big question, but the last question perhaps, and it won't be the last question because I will go on another train. But you talked about as an organization, you expect performance
Mhm.
from your people.
Yep.
And sometimes I think this gets confused when we have conversations about well-being, because it's not about people not working hard, not being ambitious.
No.
And I don't think we don't have that issue with the 80% that you found last year. People want to work hard.
Mm.
People want ambition. People want growth. But it's not, so that whole concept that well-being isn't about creating this lack of ambition or
Yep.
productivity
Yep.
or performance. It's actually just about optimizing.
Yep.
I think you used the phrase allowing people to be the best they can be.
Mm.
How important do you think that is to kind of, we need to keep making that case inside organizations that you don't need to be afraid of this because this is ultimately beneficial to both your people and your profits?
Yeah. This is not about fluffy,
Woo woo. Yeah.
hand holding, cuddling culture, right? This for me is about, as I say, enabling people to grow, produce, be creative, be innovative. We expect a lot of people. We therefore, as an organization, have a duty of care to support them to be able to do that.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, we work hard, but we also want to encourage people to take your time off. Right? Do you know how many conversations we have? Please take your time off.
Yeah.
Please switch off. Please trust your colleagues to pick up. Please do that.
Mm.
Right? So, really encouraging, and I know I'm a total hypocrite because I said I don't have an off switch, but please go switch off.
Yeah.
I do it, my own version of
Or at the
switching
very
off.
least, learn to dial down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My own version of switching off is, do not expect me to be trawling through my emails. If something urgent comes up, call me or WhatsApp me. Okay, and I'm fine with that
Mhm.
because I'd much prefer to deal with it, but I'm not going to go through because I'll get pulled into everything. So I love that point, right? That well-being and employee vitality is not a compromise to productivity or performance or ambition or P&L, or it's an enabler, it's an amplifier, an accelerator to those things when done well. It's an enabler of a high performing team.
Mm.
And after all, that's
What
that's
any leadership
would be looking
is
for.
after.
Yep.
Okay, I promise you this is the last question. But and again, it's your fault for using the word.
Oh, there we go.
But you mentioned the word trust.
Mm.
How important do you feel that is, creating that trust? And again, we're coming back to culture, but trust between colleagues, between managers and employees, between leadership and, they say strategies, conceived at the top and delivered at the bottom.
Mm.
How important is trust all the way through the organization?
Imperative. We need to trust people to do the right thing. We need to assume good intent. In doing so, I think we build that relationship. Um, I think that's one of the biggest things I've picked up on over time when you deal with situations, right? Is first and foremost, assume good intent and be kind, right? Assume good intent and be kind, and you will build your trust from there onwards. But trust needs to be built on, right? And I think communication is critical to trust, because if you don't have the right communication, then trust can break down. And some people are not able or willing to give trust. And you have to understand that some people you need to help people get to a point of trust, not least if people have come from other environments.
Very driven cultures.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
It all seems a little skeptical. It's like, really? you want to talk about that, but I think that's where leading by example comes, right? We have to show that we trust each other, and I think vulnerability comes into play there, as well as helping people walk the talk.
Assume good intent and be kind. That really genuinely feels like a mic drop moment.
Oh,
Leah,
last question.
no, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. And also thank you for the support again for the Mentl Awards
Absolute pleasure.
2025. Leah is one of many independent judges that we have for the Mentl Awards 2025 this year. She brings her insights of her decades of experience within her industry and the insights that you've heard her talking about today. And this is amplified across many of our judges. So these are the people that are looking at the projects that you're going to be submitting. So you know that the awards are meaningful and credible. It's people like Leah who are looking at your projects and going, that's really inspired me. Once again, thank you very much for joining us on the Mental Space
Absolute
podcast.
pleasure.
And if you've enjoyed this conversation at home, remember, you can please subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube and enjoying this fabulous backdrop, the subscribe button is just there. Just hit it. It helps us more than you know. But once again, thank you for tuning in to the Mental Space podcast.
Thank you, Scott.
you.
Thank you.